Councilman Brownlee, District 5.
Good evening. The big news tonight, this week, has been going into fiscal emergency. It's really not a surprise. It shouldn't be a shock to anyone that this has happened. It's been, like has been mentioned, a long process has led to this. And here we are. One thing that's worth noting is that the auditors declaring us to be in fiscal emergency did not create the fiscal problems. It was the fiscal problems that generated the declaration of fiscal emergency. So these problems already existed prior to them being pointed out by the state auditor's office. These problems they cannot be pushed off on someone else. Whenever bad things happen, it's the individual's responsibility to respond to whatever those bad circumstances may be. There's no blaming someone else for the state that the city is in. It was 2012 when our property tax base was significantly cut. It's been 2 years and we haven't adjusted to it yet. There's no one to blame but ourselves, and that may sound bad, but actually that's a good thing. Because if something is your fault, it's also in your control to change it. It's not a bad thing to take responsibility and admit that it maybe was my fault, because if it was your fault, then guess who also can get you out of this problem? You can. We don't need to be beholden to some outside help to come deliver us from our issues. We have what we need right here. Therefore, I look at this declaration to be a good thing. It's a good thing because now we know exactly where we stand. Because now we have additional resources available to us. The people who are from higher than us in the state, who do this stuff for a living, they now are here to help us figure out what we can do. There have been many, not just cities, school districts, other local governments that have done performance audits. Performance audits have shown there to be vast amounts of money that could be saved by changing the way that you do things, how they are done. Certain communities local communities have saved millions of dollars because of these performance audits. We have yet to conduct one here in Maple Heights. That may be a good place to start. Sure, the city isn't what it once was. Sure, a lot of the consequences were outside of our control. But let's look at the things that are within our control and start there. Be willing to do what needs to be done. And this is what I hope most from the declaration of fiscal emergency, is that we will soberly look, very soberly look at our position and do what has needed to be done for the past 2, perhaps 3 years in our city. Because I do believe this could have been averted if we'd have had the Constitution to make the changes that needed to be made. But here we are, and this is a good thing. This commission will give us added oversight, will increase the amount of transparency, openness, availability of information for the community and for this council. So I look forward to the months ahead, because I believe this is the step in the right direction. This is where we'll begin to turn things around, if we're willing to accept our own responsibility in this. Then we'll be able to take charge of the situation and do what needs to be done to get us where we need to go. Thank you. Have a good night.
Just a couple of comments here very quickly. We had quite a bit of snow the past couple of weeks, and it's been brutal as far, there are several things, brutal as far as the snowplows. We've got more snow coming, and I need to tell you that we have 5 snowplows that are out of commission. We have 2. So please be patient. I think someone mentioned that a while back. Please be patient. They're doing the best they can, but it's been really difficult. The other thing is the rubbish pickup that didn't happen. A lot of people called City Hall, and they called me, they called other council people. Why wasn't my rubbish picked up? Well, that's when the snow was about 6 foot, and the rubbish was on top of that, and then it stuck to the snow, and it was very difficult to get off. I did ask our service director and our service secretary to put this information, because they knew that rubbish was going to be delayed until the next day. But they just assumed that we all knew that. I didn't, and many of us did not. I think if we put it on the website as early as we possibly can, that would be really, really helpful. And I asked them to do that the next time. The other thing, if we can take our rubbish off of the mountains and put it in the driveway, that would help them a lot, because it takes a lot more effort. And I noticed that they are much slower in the snow. Also, traffic is really, it's very narrow. The road is much more narrow than it was because of all the snow on either side. But yet I see people walking 3 abreast on the roads. Very, very dangerous. I guess if you have to have your friend right next to you or the companion very close to you, that's not a bad thing. But at least what you can do is at least walk facing the traffic. You cannot hear the cars behind you. You have no idea who's behind you. I've run up on a couple of people that were just way, way off in the middle of the street and would not have had time to stop. So make sure that boys and girls and adults as well are facing traffic, so you can at least see us coming with those 2,000-pound machines. Neighborhood news will be reporting as much as we give them. So if there's anything that's said at this meeting, it goes directly to the neighborhood news. We have a marvelous reporter who puts everything on. Sometimes I wish she didn't put everything on, but then it does happen. The other thing I want to report is that we will have a special council meeting on Wednesday, the 11th of March, to discuss the budget, which needs to be done by the 31st, and it needs to be in by the 31st. Beyond that, I think the only thing that I want to say is many of you were present at the forum that Auditor Yost and Representative John Barnes held over at the St. Andrew's Church. It was an interesting several hours of dialogue, and tell me, what came of it? What was done? Nothing. Nothing. We have reached out to all of the local politicians. We've reached out to the politicians in Washington, and we sit back and enviously look not for just us, but for all of the communities that are suffering. It's not just us. $8 billion in the rainy day fund. That breaks my heart. We don't want to see Maple go down, or Park, or Warrensville, or Garfield. And there are so many more communities outside of Cuyahoga County that are suffering as well. So what can we do? I don't know. I honestly don't know. Lobby, cry, send a vote. But, well, yes, we can do that too. And I do believe that I do have to respond somewhat to some of the commentary here. We have not been stagnating for the past 2 years at all. I mean, if you've been here, you've been reading, you've been listening, we have cut. We have very little staffing. We've been cut here, we've been cut at City Hall, we've been cut at service. We will have no swimming pool open, we have no recreation. There's so many negatives that I don't want to end the evening on a negative. But I do want to say that we have not been stagnating, which is the impression that I get from Councilman Brownlee's report. We have been moving. We have been trying to bring in new businesses. We have been trying to save the businesses that we have. So to say that we are now going to look at this and we're going to move and do what needs to be done, we've been doing it. We have been. And with that, I will
Madam President? Me, over here. Can I make one comment? I forgot to mention, and Mr. Ciferati brought up the governor. I solicited all of the people in Columbia. Is that okay? Well, thank you. I solicited all of the people to assist us in saving the senior center. And I received a letter from the governor, and I gave up. I didn't send them anymore to their offices. I sent them to their homes, so that maybe they would get. And I addressed it not to the governor, but to Mr. and Mrs. Kasich, and I expressed to them the situation and the services that we provide and our hope of keeping everything open. And I received a letter back in the mail. Apparently, he took my letter and gave it to the Department of, I think, Constituent Affairs. I didn't even know we had that in Ohio. Turned the letter over to the Department of Constituent Affairs and told me that that they weren't allowed to give donations to any organizations or anything to raise money, but they certainly wished me well in my efforts. and it was signed. I don't have the letter, but I'll bring it for Mr. Ciferati to peruse because it was very interesting. It was, and again, I made it a personal ask, not to so much the governor, but to have him look at what we do, how many people we serve, the whole thing, and it went to the Department of Constituent Affairs. So, thank you.
And with that, we will end my report and all reports at 8:20. Thank you for coming out and be safe out there.